People say that Tatyova has fallen out of favor and is no longer a viable CEDH deck. Well, we are going to put that to the test tonight. We aren't going to take it easy on Tatyova though. We brought some heavy hitters to see if it can hold up in today's CEDH tables. In the ring tonight we have our Mox Pro patron Nabil piloting Tatyova Benthic Druid. This deck seeks to resolve its commander and draw a ton of extra cards. It then wins with Mystic Sanctuary and an extra turns loop. Next, we have Alex piloting Kinnan Bonder Prodigy. This deck seeks to ramp on mana using its commander. It puts troublesome permanents that are hard to interact with onto the battlefield. It then flips into massive threats to help close out the game. After that we have Mike piloting the partner pair of Tevesh Zot Doom of Fools and Kraum Ludovic's Opus. This is your classic Grixis mid-range list. It seeks to grind advantage with its commanders. It then wins with your classic Oracle or Breach lines. Finally, we have our Mox Pro patron Matt piloting the partner pair of Tymna the Weaver and Kraum Ludovic's Opus. This deck also seeks to grind advantage with its commanders. Adding white gives extra protection while still executing the classic Oracle and Breach lines. Without further ado, let's kick off this dainty, dangerous, damaging dabble. Matt won the Supaloni challenge and gets to start us off. Matt draws a card for turn and plays a Marsh Flats. He cracks it, pays a life, and fetches up a Badlands onto the battlefield. He casts a Mana Crypt. He casts a Talisman of Progress. Matt passes. Nabil draws and plays a Forest. They cast an Exploration. They play a Tropical Island as their Exploration land for turn. Nabil passes. Alex draws and plays a Misty Rainforest. He cracks it, pays a life, and fetches up a Tropical Island onto the battlefield. He casts an Allosaurus Shepherd. Alex ends his turn. Mike draws and plays a Verdant Catacombs. He cracks it, pays a life, and fetches up an Underground Sea onto the battlefield. He casts a Mystic Remora. Mike passes the turn. During its upkeep, Matt wins his Mana Crypt roll. He draws and plays a Sea of Clouds. He casts his commander, Kraum Ludovic's Opus. He moves to Krombat and attacks Mike with Kraum. Mike takes it, and Matt ships the turn. Nabil draws and plays a Snow-Covered Island. They cast Collect a Roof. They play a Boseiju, who shelters all as their Exploration land for turn. Nabil gives the turn to Alex. Alex draws and plays a Forest. He casts a Bloom Tender. He moves to combat and attacks Matt with Allosaurus Shepherd. Matt takes it, and Alex passes. During its upkeep, Mike pays to keep his Remora. He draws, misses his land drop, and passes. During his upkeep, Matt wins his Mana Crypt roll. He draws and plays a Command Tower. He casts Drannith Magistrate. The table starts to feel the pressure as Matt moves to combat. He attacks Nabil with Kraum. Nabil takes it, and Matt ships the turn. Nabil draws and plays an island. Nabil passes. Alex draws and plays an Alchemist's Refuge. He moves to combat and attacks Mike with Allosaurus Shepherd. Mike takes it, and Alex passes. During his upkeep, Mike lets his Remora die. He draws and passes, discarding to hand size. During his upkeep, Matt loses his Mana Crypt roll and takes 3 damage. He draws and casts his other commander, Tymna the Weaver. He moves to combat and attacks Nabil with Kraum and Mike with Drannith. They both take it, and in his second main phase, Matt pays 2 life and draws 2 cards through Tymna. He plays a Cavern of Souls, naming Human as it enters. Matt ships the turn. Nabil draws and casts Trade Routes. Nabil passes. Alex draws and casts Thought Vessel. He moves to combat and attacks Mike with both of his creatures. Mike takes it, and Alex passes. At the end of Alex's turn, Mike casts Vampiric Tutor, fetching up a card onto the top of his library and losing 2 life. Mike draws and plays a Command Tower. He casts Gilded Drake. It enters and exchanges control of Matt's Kraum. Mike ends his turn. During his upkeep, Matt loses his Mana Crypt roll and takes 3 damage. He draws and plays a Flooded Strand. He cracks it, pays a life, and fetches up a Tundra onto the battlefield. He channels Ottawara Soaring City, bouncing Kraum back to his hand. He moves to combat and attacks Nabil with Gilded Drake, Alex with Drannith, and Mike with Tymna. They all take it, and Matt gains 2 life. In his second main phase, Matt pays 3 life and draws 3 cards through Tymna. He casts Grand Abolisher. Matt passes to Nabil. Nabil draws and taps Boseiju, who shelters all to help cast Beast Within, targeting Drannith Magistrate. Drannith is destroyed, and Matt creates a 3/3 Beast. Nabil plays a Windswept Heath for turn. They crack it, pay a life, and fetch up a Breeding Pool into play untapped, paying 2 life. They cast Azusa, Lost But Seeking. Nabil ships the turn. Alex draws and casts his commander, Kinnan Bonder Prodigy. He casts a Manglehorn. It enters and destroys Matt's Talisman. He moves to combat and attacks Mike with Shepherd. Mike takes it, and Alex ends his turn. Mike draws and casts Reanimate, targeting Hullbreaker Horror in his graveyard. It enters, and Mike loses 7 life. Mike passes. During his upkeep, Matt wins his Mana Crypt roll. He draws and plays a Verdant Catacombs. He cracks it, pays a life, and fetches up an Underground Sea onto the battlefield. He recasts his commander, Kraum. He moves to combat and attacks Nabil with Kraum, Alex with his Beast, and Mike with Gilded Drake. They all take it, and in his second main phase, Matt pays 3 life and draws 3 cards through Tymna. He passes, discarding to hand size. Nabil draws and taps Boseiju to help cast their commander, Tatyova Benthic Druid. They play a Gemstone Caverns for turn. Tatyova triggers and Nabil gains a life and draws a card. They activate Trade Routes, bouncing Gemstone Caverns back to their hand. They play Gemstone Caverns as their first Azusa land for turn. Tatyova triggers and Nabil gains a life and draws a card. They play Oboro, Palace in the Clouds as their second Azusa land. Tatyova triggers and Nabil gains a life and draws a card. They activate Trade Routes, bouncing Oboro back to their hand. They play Oboro as their final Azusa land for turn, then gain a life and draw a card through Tatyova. Nabil passes. Alex draws and casts Seedborn Muse. Alex passes the turn. Alex untaps with Mike through Seedborn. Mike draws, takes no actions, and passes. During his upkeep, Matt wins his Mana Crypt roll. He draws and plays a Scrubland. He casts Ranger Captain of Eos. It enters, and Matt fetches up an Esper Sentinel into his hand. He moves to combat and attacks Nabil with Kraum and Mike with Gilded Drake. They both take it, and in his second main phase, Matt pays 2 life and draws 2 cards through Tymna. He casts an Esper Sentinel. He casts Swords to Plowshares targeting Collector Oof. Oof is exiled, and Nabil gains 2 life. Next, Matt casts Phantasmal Image. It enters as a copy of Hullbreaker Horror. He casts a Lotus Petal. Horror triggers, and he bounces Mana Crypt to his hand. Matt was ready to present a loop until Alex points out the Manglehorn on the battlefield. So Lotus Petal enters the battlefield tapped. Matt casts Mana Crypt. Horror triggers, bouncing Manglehorn back to Alex's hand. He casts Lion's Eye Diamond, bouncing Mana Crypt back to his hand. He presents a loop of bouncing and recasting LED and Mana Crypt, netting infinite colorless mana. He casts the One Ring. Hullbreaker triggers, bouncing Mana Crypt. It enters and he gains protection from everything. He presents another loop of drawing a card through the One Ring, bouncing it with Mana Crypt, and recasting it to draw another card. He draws his entire deck. He casts Chrome Mox, imprinting Swan Song. He casts Arcane Signet. He casts Thassa's Oracle. Oracle enters, and Matt wins the game. Do you have extra cards lying around that you don't use? Want to buy or trade for some extra cards but don't know how to maximize the value? Then you should try out today's sponsor, Card Conduit. Card Conduit is the best service when it comes to selling your extra cards. Don't waste hours trying to find the best buy list price for your cards online. Simply send them to Card Conduit and let them take care of the rest. I have used Card Conduit multiple times already. I always use them to get the best value for my extra cards. I get fair prices for my cards and they save me tons of time. They have 3 main services. Their standard service lets you send them your unsorted cards of any value. They will sort, grade, and give you the best price for your cards. Their curated service is similar. Send them your unsorted cards worth over $1 in value. They will charge half the fee of the standard service and charge no fee per card. Their sorted service is a great value as well. Choose cards in advance with their selection tool, send them sorted to Card Conduit, and they will grade and buy list them automatically. Save yourself the time of having to send to multiple sites and let Card Conduit do it instead. Their fee is only 2% with no fee per card. They give you the best price for your cards. They work with competitive buy listing partners, including ones not open to the public. Users get an average of 19% more for their collection than they would from any major retail buy list, even with Card Conduit's fees. Card Conduit also optimizes buy listing for card condition as well. Since vendors have different penalties for wear and tear, Card Conduit will find the best buy list priced against the specific condition of the card. So give Card Conduit a try today. If you sign up with my link in the description below or use the promo code POWER, you will also get 10% off of their fees when you use their service. A big thanks to Card Conduit for sponsoring today's video. Before they begin, Alex has a pre-game action, putting Gemstone Caverns onto the battlefield, exiling Mirage Mirror. Nabil draws and plays a snow-covered forest. Nabil passes. Alex draws and plays a forest. He casts his commander, Kinnan, Bonder Prodigy. Alex passes. Mike draws and plays an Underground Sea. He ends his turn. Matt draws and plays a Cavern of Souls, naming Humid as it enters. He casts a Lotus Petal and ships the turn. Nabil draws and plays an Oboro, Palace in the Clouds as their land for turn. They cast 3 visits. In response, Matt cracks his petal to cast Dark Ritual, adding 3 black. He taps Cavern of Souls to flash in an uncounterable Opposition Agent. Agent resolves, then Matt fetches up a tropical island from Nabil's library into exile. Nabil passes. Alex draws and plays a Homeward Path. He casts a Soul Ring. He casts an Elvish Mystic. He casts a Phantasmal Image. It enters as a copy of Opposition Agent. He moves to combat and attacks Mike with Kinnan. Mike takes it, and Alex gives the turn to Mike. Mike draws and plays a Training Center. He casts Dark Ritual, adding 3 black. He casts Wheel of Fortune. Each player discards their hand and draws 7. He casts a Mox Opal. Mike ends his turn. Matt draws and plays a Tropical Island from exile through Opposition Agent. He casts a Mana Vault. He passes. Nabil draws and casts a Chrome Mox, imprinting Veil of Summer. They cast a Lotus Cobra. They play an island and pass the turn. Alex draws and plays a Gaia's Cradle. He casts the One Ring. It enters and Alex gains protection from everything. He activates the One Ring, adding a burden counter and drawing a card. He casts Seedborn Views. He casts Mox Diamond, discarding a City of Traders. Finished up, Alex passes. Alex untaps with Mike through Seedborn. Mike draws and plays a Luxury Suite. He passes. At the end of Mike's turn, Alex activates Kinnan. In response, Mike casts Cyclonic Rift, targeting Seedborn Muse. In response, Alex activates the One Ring, adding a counter and drawing 2 cards. Then Seedborn is bounced and Kinnan's ability resolves. Alex looks at the top 5, putting Allosaur Shepherd onto the battlefield. The turn moves to Matt. Matt draws and plays a Bloodstained Mire. He passes. Nabil draws and plays a Scalding Tarn. Lotus Cobra triggers and Nabil adds a green. They cast their commander, Tatyova, Benthic Druid. Nabil ships the turn. At the end of Nabil's turn, Alex activates Kinnan, looking at the top 5, failing to find. During his upkeep, Alex loses 2 life to the One Ring. Still in his upkeep, he activates the One Ring, adding a counter and drawing 3 cards. He draws and plays a Manamo, School at Water's Edge as his land for turn. He casts Terastodon. It enters and Alex destroys all of Matt's lands. Matt then creates 3 3/3 elephants. Next, Alex pays 2 life to cast Phyrexian Metamorph. It enters as a copy of Terastodon. It enters and destroys all 3 of Mike's lands. Then Mike creates 3 elephants. He casts a Mox Amber. He recasts Seedborn Muse. Alex passes. Alex untaps with Mike through Seedborn. Mike draws and plays a Watery Grave into play tapped. He passes. At the end of Mike's turn, Alex activates the One Ring, adding a burn counter and drawing 4. He activates Manamo, untapping the One Ring. He activates the One Ring, adding another counter and drawing 5. The table agrees that there isn't really anything anyone can do, concede, and Alex wins the game. Before they begin, Matt has a pre-game action, putting Gemstone Caverns onto the battlefield, exiling Savine's Reclamation. Alex draws and plays a Rejuvenating Springs. He casts a Mana Crypt. He casts a Soul Ring. He casts a Mind Stone. He casts a Mirage Mirror. After a blazing turn 1 done, Alex passes. Mike draws and plays a Luxury Suite. He casts a Soul Ring. He casts a Talisman of Dominance. He casts Imperial Seal. He fetches up a card onto the top of his library and loses 2 life. Mike passes the turn. Matt draws and plays a Mana Confluence. He taps it to cast Ragavan, Nimble Pilferer. He casts Culling the Weak, sacrificing Ragavan as an additional cost, adding 4 black. He exiles Simeon's Spirit Guide from his hand, adding a red. He casts Ad Nauseam. He reveals a March of Swirling Mist, Exotic Orchard, Final Fortune, Otawara Soaring City, Brain Freeze, Toxic Deluge, Ranger Captain of Eos, Sea of Clouds, Dark Ritual, Misty Rainforest, Plateau, Opposition Agent, Mindbreak Trap, Hallowed Fountain, Pyroblast, Felwar Stone, Scrubland, Angel's Grace, Rite of Flame, Flusterstorm, Mana Vault, Phantasmal Image, Intuition, Swords to Plowshares, Wishclaw Talisman, and Talion the Kindly Lord, deciding to stop there. Unfortunately, he did not flip into 1 piece of fast mana, and unfortunately has to pass, discarding to hand size. Nabil draws and plays an island. They cast a Soul Ring. Nabil passes. During his upkeep, Alex wins his Mana Crypt roll. He draws and plays an Alchemist's Refuge. He activates Mirage Mirror, having it become a copy of Rejuvenating Springs. He casts his commander, Kinnan, Bonder Prodigy. Alex ends his turn. Mike draws and plays a Blood Crypt into play untapped, paying 2 life. He taps his Talisman to help cast his commander, Kraum, Ludovic's Opus. He moves to Krombat and attacks Mike with Kraum. Matt takes it and dies. Mike ships the turn. Nabil draws and plays a Breeding Pool into play untapped, paying 2 life. They cast Azusa, Lost But Seeking. In response, Alex activates Mirage Mirror, making it a copy of Kraum. Nabil plays an island as their Azusa land for turn, and play a Homeward Path as their second Azusa land. Nabil ends their turn. During his upkeep, Alex wins his Mana Crypt roll. He draws and activates Mirage Mirror, making it a copy of Mike's Talisman. He taps his Talisman to help cast a Whir of Invention where X equals 3. In response, Nabil hard casts Force of Negation. In response, Alex activates Mind Stone, sacrificing it, drawing a card. Then Force counters and exiles Whir. Alex passes the turn. Mike draws and taps his Talisman to help cast a Rhystic Study. Mike passes. Nabil draws and casts a Mana Vault, paying for Rhystic. They cast their commander, Tatyova, Benthic Druid. Kraum triggers and Mike draws. They play a Waterlogged Grove for turn. Tatyova triggers and they gain a life and draw a card. Nabil ships the turn. During his upkeep, Alex wins his Mana Crypt roll. He draws and casts As Foretold, paying for Rhystic. Alex ends his turn. Mike draws and moves to combat. He attacks Alex with Kraum. Alex takes it, and in his second main phase, Mike casts Toxic Deluge where X equals 3, paying 3 life. All creatures get -3/-3, and Mike passes to Nabil. During their draw step, Nabil takes a damage from their Mana Vault. They recast their commander, Tatyova. Rhystic triggers and Mike draws. Nabil plays a Scalding Tarn for turn. Tatyova triggers and Nabil gains a life and draws a card. They crack Scalding Tarn, pay a life, and fetch up a tropical island onto the battlefield. Tatyova triggers and Nabil gains a life and draws another card. Nabil ends their turn. During his upkeep, Alex loses his Mana Crypt roll and takes 3 damage. He also puts a counter onto As Foretold. He draws and casts Llanowar Elves for free through As Foretold, paying the Rhystic tax. He activates Mirage Mirror, making it a copy of Rejuvenating Springs. He recasts his commander, Kinnan, Bonder Prodigy. Rhystic and Kraum trigger, and Mike draws 2. Alex passes. At the end of Alex's turn, Mike flashes in an Orcish Bowmasters. It enters, kills Llanowar Elves, and Mike amasses Orcs 1. The turn moves to Mike. Mike draws and plays a City of Brass. He moves to combat and attacks Alex with Kraum. Alex takes it, and Mike passes to Nabil. During their draw step, Nabil takes a damage through Mana Vault. They cast Collector Roof, paying for Rhystic. Nabil ships the turn. At the end of Nabil's turn, Alex casts Worldly Tutor for free through As Foretold. Rhystic triggers and Mike draws. Then Alex fetches up a Birds of Paradise onto the top of his library. Still in the end step, Mike casts Red Elemental Blast, destroying Kinnan. The turn moves to Alex. During his upkeep, Alex wins his Mana Crypt roll. He also puts a counter onto As Foretold. He draws and casts Phantasmal Image for free through As Foretold, paying the Rhystic tax. In response, Mike casts Force of Will, paying a life, exiling a blue card. In response, Alex casts Veil of Summer. Rhystic and Kraum triggers, and Mike draws 2. In response, Mike taps City of Brass to cast Swan Song, targeting Vale. Vale is countered, Alex creates a 2/2 bird, then force counters Fimmage. Alex ends his turn. Mike draws and plays a command tower. He passes. During their draw step, Nabil takes a damage from Mana Vault. They take no actions and pass the turn. During his upkeep, Alex wins his Mana Crypt roll. He also puts a counter onto As Foretold. He draws and plays an Exotic Orchard. He casts a Birds of Paradise for free through As Foretold, paying for Ristic. Alex ends his turn. Mike draws and plays an Ancient Tomb. He moves to combat and attacks Alex with Kraum. Alex takes it, and Mike passes. During their draw step, Nabil takes a damage through Mana Vault. They play a Gemstone Caverns for turn. Tatyova triggers, and Nabil gains a life and draws a card. Bowmasters triggers, Mike kills Birds of Paradise, and Mike amasses 1. Nabil passes. During his upkeep, Alex loses his Mana Crypt roll and takes 3 damage. He also adds a counter to As Foretold. He draws and plays Gemstone Caverns. He casts Kinnan for free through As Foretold, paying the Commander tax. Ristic triggers and Mike draws. Alex passes the turn. At the end of Alex's turn, Mike casts Tainted Pact. He exiles from the top of his library until he exiles a Mystic Remora, putting it into his hand. The turn moves to Mike. Mike draws and plays a Marsh Flats. He cracks it, pays a life, and fetches up a Watery Grave onto the battlefield untapped, paying 2 life. He casts a Mystic Remora. He moves to combat and attacks Alex with Kraum. Alex takes it, and Mike passes. At the end of Mike's turn, Nabil casts an Overloaded Cyclonic Rift. Ristic and Mystic trigger, and Mike draws 2. In response, Mike casts Fierce Guardianship for its alternate cost, countering Rift. The turn moves to Nabil. During their draw step, Nabil takes a damage through Mana Vault. In their main phase, they cast Capture of Jingqiao. Ristic and Mystic trigger, and Mike draws 2. Then Nabil gains an extra turn. Nabil taps Waterlog Grove to cast Trade Routes. Mystic, Ristic, and Kraum trigger, and Mike draws 3 cards. Trade Routes resolves, and Nabil passes the turn to himself. During their upkeep, Nabil pays 2 life to cast Noxious Revival, targeting Azusa in their graveyard. Mystic and Ristic trigger, and in response, Mike casts Mystical Tutor. In response, Nabil pays 2 life to cast Mental Misstep. Mystic, Ristic, and Kraum trigger, and Mike draws 3 cards. Then Misstep counters Tutor, Mike draws from Ristic and Mystic, and Nabil puts Azusa onto the top of his library. During their draw step, Nabil takes a damage through Mana Vault. They cast Azusa, Lost But Seeking, paying for Ristic. In response, Mike casts Pact of Negation. In response, Nabil casts Swan Song. Ristic and Mystic trigger, and Mike draws 2. Swan Song counters Pact, Mike creates a 2/2 bird, and still in response, Mike casts Mindbreak Trap for its alternate cost, exiling Azusa. Nabil activates Trade Routes, bouncing an island back to their hand. They play an island for turn. Tatyova triggers, and Nabil gains a life and draws a card. Bowmasters triggers, pings Collector Roof, and Mike amasses 1. Finished up, Nabil passes. During his upkeep, Alex loses his Mana Crypt roll and takes 3 damage. He also adds a counter to As Foretold. He draws and casts a Mox Opal. Ristic and Mystic trigger, and Mike draws 2. Alex passes. During his upkeep, Mike lets his Remora die. He draws and plays an Exotic Orchard. He taps Ancient Tomb to help cast Diabolic Intent, sacrificing his Orc army as an additional cost, fetching up a card into his hand. He moves to combat and attacks Alex with Kraum. Alex takes lethal commander damage and dies. In his second main phase, Mike casts Underworld Breach. He casts a Mana Crypt. He casts a Chrome Mox, imprinting Necropotence. He casts Chain of Vapor, targeting Collector Oof. Oof bounces, and Nabil stops the chain. Mike taps his Talisman to help cast Brain Freeze, with all copies targeting himself. He mills 18 cards. He escapes Dockside Extortionist. It enters, and Mike creates 3 treasures. He escapes Brain Freeze, with all copies targeting himself, milling 24. Mike escapes Diabolic Intent, sacrificing Kraum as an additional cost, fetching up a card into his hand. He escapes Lion's Eye Diamond. He cracks it, discards his hand, and adds 3 blue. He escapes LED again, then cracks it for 3 more blue. He escapes Narset, Parter of Veils. He casts Thassa's Oracle. In response, Nabil cracks Waterlog Grove, drawing a card. Oracle enters, and with a devotion of 5 and 5 left in his library, Mike wins the game. Well, we have our results, and I have to say that Tatyova struggled to keep relevant for the majority of the evening. Tatyova is a ton of fun to pilot, but I do think that this deck isn't able to keep up in today's metas. Maybe with some fresh updates and new eyes, this deck might be able to shine again. The most valuable card in tonight's games, sponsored by Luxury Playstyle, goes to Collector Roof. This card turned every game sideways when it resolved. It was the fundamental stacks piece that made everyone pivot from try to win the game into dig for an answer. It's a strong piece in the right decks. Thank you so much for watching, and check out this video to see what happens when you sacrifice Protean Hulk 3 times in a single turn.